Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Blatantly Honest. On today's episode, I got to sit down with Miss Hillsborough County, Katrina Spagnoletti. She is an incredible mom, wife, and role model, and also a survivor of sexual abuse as a child. She finally had the courage to open up about it at 55 years old and has created a platform to educate people on how to use their voices by showing them how to protect themselves and others when it comes to physical and mental abuse. It's a privilege to have you on the show.
This is an honor too, and I'm so appreciative of you having me here.
Yes, so Miss Katrina Spagnoletti.
Yes,
Yes, I got it. Also, Miss Hillsborough County.
yes.
We actually met just recently, through the pageant system, and I am so excited to get to know you and hear your story and all the incredible things that you're doing. So, how did you get to be where you are today?
Well, I mean, as far as like pageantry, or
Yeah, let's talk about your whole story. I want to hear it all.
well, I wasn't in a household where they encouraged this. I didn't even really know anything about it unless you watch TV like the Miss America or Miss USA. So as I got older, social media is great to like inform you of so many different things. There was a 2011 Mrs. Virginia. Her name is Brandy Pope, and I saw how beautiful she was and how poised she was. But she was also she was discussing MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and how her father was killed by a drunk driver when she was a teenager. And, of course, that's going to touch you. It doesn't matter who you are, it's going to touch you, and you're going to want to know more. So I knew I began to research her, and I discovered that she was the current Mrs. Virginia. And I was like, wow, that would be so great to have a platform, have something like that pageantry, so you can have a stage to discuss your platform. I feel everybody has a story. I mean, everyone has a story. Some stories are great and some stories aren't that great. Mine happen to not be that great. My platform is Voices. It discusses sexual abuse. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse as a child. And I educate people on how to use their voice in order to protect themselves and inspire others to speak out and tell their stories. Because I've discovered that every time I tell my story, that there's someone who either texts me or stays after my speaking engagement and opens up to me, because at that point, I become a safe house for healing. And that's why this is so important. So that was my start, just seeing Brandy Pope.
Wow, wow. So, if you're comfortable talking about it, I'd like to talk a little bit about your story when you were younger. How old were you when this was going on?
Well, the first incident, I was 5, and the
Oh,
incredible thing about this is that your brain. I learned so much about your brain. Your brain is a mechanism of healing, and I completely thought it was a dream. It was like every day I would have this recurring like daydream of it happening to me, and it was a family member. So I never
oh,
spoke out because at 5 years old, you really not
you don't know.
conscious of anything. You have no clue what's going on in your life. So you're so impressionable. So I had this dream, and I'll get back to that dream in a minute. But when I was about, I would say 12, 13, 14, and this again, the brain is an amazing thing. It's very powerful. And you forget so much. That's the protection that you have when it comes to cases like this. And I've spoken to women who have the same issue, that it's very difficult for them to remember because that protection was there. But I do remember, because it happened for so many years. It was my stepfather. He actually sexually abused me in my teenage years, and I
Oh,
never
so
told
sorry.
anyone. I never spoke to anyone because I was a very shy person. I was very shy and introverted. I never got in trouble. And I think a lot of that had to do with what happened to me. So I think it was about in my 20s, I had my first son. And my mother, she didn't know anything about it. And and this is one memory I'll always remember. We were actually in Virginia, and she had left my stepdad. But then she said that she was going to go back. And I was a mother at that time. So There's
I
no
can't
way I was
imagine how you
gonna.
felt.
So when she said that, I said, if you do, I can't allow my son to go there because, and then I told her my story. She never got back with my stepdad. She didn't know what to do. She had no clue what to say or do. But I will tell you, and I'm allowed to say this now because I've spoken to her about it. She was actually a product of sexual abuse by a family member as well. And I decided that I was going to break that chain because it's so prevalent right now. A lot of people don't understand that the person that you trust more than anything, when they take that away from you, when they take your trust away, you can't use your voice. You have no clue. You're too afraid. You're ashamed, or you just don't want to hurt someone else. So I think that was the biggest reason why I never told anyone until I knew my son might have been in danger.
Do you think that's incredibly brave of you? I also am a victim of sexual assault. I don't consider myself a victim anymore, and I don't know if that's a word that you use. I mean, now that we've grown, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I'm not a mother, but I can't imagine having a son and going through this, and your mom went through this.
Yeah.
Was that the moment when you're like, I am breaking this chain. I am not going to let
Oh,
this happen?
definitely. Definitely. I was not, I, a lot of, and you can probably relate to what I'm about to say. A lot of the outcome, you see, there's a lot of chaos in your life, but there's a lot of protection that you have for your child. And I think the protection, I just wanted to protect him. I didn't want him to ever feel that fear. I had to live in the same home for years with this person. And every time I think about it and why I didn't say anything or why I didn't do anything about it, I also think about how did I live there for so long? How did that happen for so long? And this is me as an adult because that child could have said that child knew exactly why she was there. She knew exactly why she kept silent. I won't keep silent anymore. And this is the surprising thing. I'm almost 56 years old.
No, you're not.
By the time I compete for the title in July, I'll be 56 years old. I'm 55 now, and I actually didn't start speaking about it until last year. And that's how
Really?
difficult it was. I didn't to be able to sit there in front of an audience and because I didn't want to let those emotions come out as I spoke because I feel that it loses a lot of its power. Once you see tears or the audience sees tears, it loses that power of how deep this really is. There are 42 million people who have been abused in some way as a child in this world, and we have to stop that. We have to put a stop. We have to break the chain. I think we go through a lot of emotions when we go through this. We go through sadness. We go through depression. That's something that I really have to catch myself in. Is that
Every
depression? Because
day.
I don't know how I'm going to feel after I finish this interview. I have no clue. I don't know if I'm just going to feel, wow, this is great. I was brave, or if I'm going to feel like, oh, I didn't want to see that little girl again. I didn't want to hear that little girl talk. So it's so many excuse me, so many different things. But even raising your children, and either you could go one way or the other, not be as protective or be overly protective. And I
So
was
where do you draw that
overly.
line?
I think you draw it when they start saying, "Mom, I'm okay."
Yeah, that
Yeah,
would seem fair.
that's my experience when they were like, "Mom, stop, stop." But you have to build that self confidence too. I think that self confidence is going to show that balance, and I didn't have that as a child. I didn't.
And so you're finding that now. I mean, I heard you
Oh,
mention
definitely.
I don't, and you're 55 right now.
Hmm.
So you're 55 years old, and you decided a year ago that you were gonna talk about this and not be afraid. What was that moment like? Obviously, you're a mother, and what about last year really inspired you to say, you know what, I'm speaking up because my story is powerful and it's impactful, and
Okay, that story that I first told about when I had that dream of
Mhm.
being sexually abused. I was sitting in the car with my mom, And it was Thanksgiving, as a matter of fact, Thanksgiving Day of 2019. We were sitting in the car. I was in Virginia with her. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but she said to me, she told me a story of one of my cousins who was actually abused by that same family member. And I heard the story and I looked at her and I said, I believe that story because this is what happened to me.
Ugh,
And the thing is,
chills.
it's so difficult, especially talking to your mom, because she was the one who invited that person into her home. And that was so difficult. No matter what happened with me, I think one of the biggest things that kept me from saying anything is because my mom was involved in some way of being, bringing people into the home. And she trusted those people. And I didn't want her to think anything of herself. It's so interesting how you still want, even though you went through it, you still want to protect other people from the things that happened to you. And I always felt that I was my mother's keeper when it came to that. I didn't want her to feel like she did anything wrong because she didn't. She had no clue. But after we had that conversation, I really couldn't discuss it at that moment. And I just felt anger. I was so angry, not only at her, but at my family for not protecting us from that person. And then I said to myself, because my kids are aware of it. I definitely wanted
Mhm.
them to be aware of it because you have to be aware of something that could happen to you. So
Correct.
I spoke to my oldest son, who is 32 now, and I told him of my anger, and he said, "Why don't you talk to her?" And I finally sat down this year, and I said, "This is why I haven't been calling you because the anger I've felt." And she told me something. She said, "I had no clue until a few years ago." And she started to cry, and that was
Ugh.
difficult. But I didn't. She didn't blame it on herself, and I always thought she would blame it on herself, but she didn't. She was okay. She was like, "I have to tell you my story," and that was just another person that I could be a safe house for, and it was my mother, and that made me feel it's just it really that is the I think the first step of true recovery for me is sharing my story with another person who I love more than anything, and us being okay, and her finally saying, "You should do this. I'm so proud of you for doing this because I never had this. I've never had someone who I could share my story with." And that was the first person she did, and I'm her
Wow.
child. So
Wow. Oh, wow. That's just ugh, I can't imagine how that felt talking
well,
to
it,
your
it
mom
was it was
about that. And
actually liberating, to be honest. It was actually I felt so much better about sharing my story because that was the last piece of the puzzle is having my mother here or me having to continue to protect her. She said, "I'm fine. You can
wow.
go. You can tell people because people need to know." So that was it. That was enough for me to come on today and say, "Hey, this
Wow.
is what happened to me. I'm okay. I'm not going to shed tears. I just want other women to be empowered by my story so they can tell their stories and tell their stories to their daughters, to their sons, to their best friends, to their mother, so that we can have a safe house and a safe community of women that we can all go to."
Wow. You're so strong, and like I said, I can't imagine. We all go through different things, and
Mhm.
mine was different. Mine was someone I knew, my best guy friend, and I was 14, and it was hard.
Yeah.
And for me, it was writing and writing and writing and writing, and I wrote my book, and that helped me. And when I had to tell my parents, it broke my heart.
Yeah.
And your story, I'm sure, the anger you felt and all that, but now you're
Yeah.
relieved
Yeah,
almost.
I am. I'm definitely
So,
relieved, and it's so much easier for me to come on and speak about it. And I mean, it's just, I wish I would have done it, and I continue to say this. I wish I would have opened up and used my voice so much long ago. I mean, I
better
think,
late than never.
yeah, it's better late than never, but I think I could have helped so many other people. But pageantry is the reason why I did it. I don't know if I would have done it if I didn't see how all these amazing women are using that platform to help others. And I'll be honest, I think pageantry really opened me up to do this.
Wow. That's incredible. And to be completely honest with you, this is going to be my first pageant. So,
Welcome, welcome.
thank you. Yeah, I had no idea the depth and everyone just sharing their story. It almost, not that you forget people go through things in life, but sometimes we feel alone going through these things. And it's like, oh my God, someone else went through something like me. And, it's mind blowing and heartbreaking to see that we all have these really hard and difficult times, but also, come out like you and share your story and empower women to let them know that their voice matters. So, is the reason that you chose voices because you feel like, victims of sexual assault and harassment don't really speak up? Or what really, set that platform and precedent aside from your own story?
Well, I have to say, I don't know if I even thought out of the box. I'll be honest. I don't even think I went. But as I started speaking to young people about it, there was one incident. I worked with a guy, a gentleman. His name is Christopher King. He's the grandson of BB King, and he has an organization called the Gentleman's Course, and he teaches young people about etiquette, manners, and human trafficking. But he also invites women or whoever he can get to motivate, come in and motivate these children and tell their story. I remember sitting in the first time I really ever spoke about it in front of an audience of like it was a room full of girls, about 30 young girls who were at a job corps in St. Pete, and I remember seeing this other speakers. They had the same exact thing happen to them. They were sexually abused, mentally abused, even beaten, physically abused. But to hear them speak and to see these young girls in tears, we had to even get a couple of girls and escort them out because we just couldn't. That was a room full of emotions there. You couldn't, we had to take breaks because it was so overwhelming to like see hear everything that we were hearing. But the great thing about that day was this, that I got to meet more sisters. I got to meet more safe houses. I got to see these young girls and their counselors understand why they were going through the struggles that they were in this program. They said they had no clue, but I also got to be able to help these girls get help so that they can start to change their lives because they were in this job corps not because it was all about learning a trade, but they were kicked out of their homes or they were being sexually abused by people who were supposed to be protecting them. So it was just incredible to see that. And I think I came out of that with, okay, yeah, now I've got to think out of the box. Now I have to understand that my story is going to help so many other people. I just needed to start the healing process. And I thought that Voices was that healing process. So if someone saw me with a sash and a crown, and they
Mhm.
see this woman walk in and are like, wow, she's a beauty queen. She must be really awesome. She probably had nothing ever going in her life
She
that was
got everything
impressive.
going for her.
Exactly. She's no care in the world. I mean, for
Oh,
them to see that and go, wow, this is, she's okay. I can do what she's doing. I can hear her story and see how she has a great relationship with her husband. That she has amazing children that grew up just successful and continuing to be. I mean, they're healthy. Like that was it. That was everything to me. So I think with Voices, it has to do with letting people see that you can do anything you want. Your past does not dictate who you are today. It doesn't.
that's so powerful. Do you think, like you mentioned, there's a lot of stereotypes when it comes to pageantry, right? Am I wrong?
It
So,
is.
yeah, do you find that from doing that, you're hoping to change people's minds about pageantry and,
Oh,
you know,
definitely. Definitely. Because I think before I even became a pageant girl, that it was all about beauty and it was all about, who looks great in a bathing suit because that's what we see. We don't see the interview process. They don't understand that's the biggest part of winning a crown is being able to sit in front of judges and talk about your platform or talk about things that you've accomplished, like, and be poised about it. And I don't think they really put out, and I've never heard this either, that you're going to compete against some amazing women that you become great friends with. Like
Yeah.
that is because this is my second pageant. I actually competed in Virginia for Mrs. Virginia, and I was 53 at the time, and I came out with second runner up, and it was my
Wow.
first pageant. But the interview process was huge. That is so important, and I don't think people understand that. I don't think they really get that it's not all about, because everyone's going to be beautiful. Everyone's
Hmm.
going to be look great in a bathing suit. What is it, that one thing that takes it is interview, confidence, and being brave enough to tell your story. So yeah, I want people to be aware of that. I really do.
I do too. I think it's incredible. And, speaking to someone like yourself is just, it's empowering to me because, being the little girl that went through that. And, I'm 22 now, and this happened to me when I was 14. And sometimes it still bothers me.
Oh,
And,
definitely.
some days I'm fine and some days I'm not. And, you have good days and bad days.
You do.
So, what would you say to a little girl who might be watching, who might be going through something at home and, she's being sexually abused or assaulted? What advice would you give to her right now or your younger self?
Well, I'll tell you, as a mom, I used to tell my children, because I have firm alpha males. They're like, ugh, I'll keep everything to myself, mom.
Manly
You're my
men.
mom. You have to back up. I would have to. I had to invent a phrase for them. If you don't tell me, I can't help. And if that's what I would say, if you don't speak and if you don't tell someone, no one can help. You're continuing to be in this by yourself. Use your voice. That is so powerful. If you, Maya Angelou, she actually went through the same thing we went through. She was raped by a family friend when she was 5 years old and didn't speak until she was 7. And the reason she spoke is because her teacher introduced her to poetry, and she would write on a pad of paper how much she loved poetry. And her teacher looked at her and said, "You really don't, because if you did, you would speak it." That broke the cycle of her not speaking. The reason she didn't speak is because she thought her voice was so powerful. Because the person who raped her, they found him dead when she spoke. So that's why she didn't speak. And then for 7 years, when she discovered poetry, that's when she started to speak, because she really wanted to use her voice to empower other people. So yeah,
Wow. I did not know that.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. It's so powerful what voices can do and,
It
what
really
yours
is.
is doing.
It really is. You have to use your voice, because no one can help you if you don't. No one.
Very true. So tell me a little bit about your speaking engagements. Where do you do those? Who do you speak to mainly?
Well, I like to speak to younger girls, of course, because
Hmm.
that is definitely my target audience. But also speaking, I speak on social media, because right now we all know we're staying at home. We're
Yes.
practicing patience.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I've been actually constructing a lot of videos, but
There you
also
go.
going live. I was actually supposed to go through a course with Dress for Success, where they you go through a course and you become a volunteer and be a guest speaker for them at some of their events. But working with Christopher King is great, but right now we're all restricted to being in a room with a lot of people, so everything has basically been put on hold. But social media is amazing. That's my stage right now, and it's going to be that for a long time until we get back to our normal.
Yeah, social media is definitely coming in hand right now. As much, crap as
It
we all
really
give it when
is.
we can, and now it's like, well, this is how I'm going to talk to my friends and
But it's
all that.
great. It's great if you use social media in a positive way. It's great. It's great. I come from an era where we didn't have this, and I think it's. I might not know all the tricks of the trades, but I can tell you, using it as a stage for business or a pageantry or anything is such an amazing thing. I've got a lot of followers, so I get the opportunity to talk to women about this issue, because I have really met a lot of women that are in my community of abuse. I've met a lot, but also I do lives, and when someone wants to come on and talk about it, they actually allow me to put them in the live, and they talk about it as well. So
Wow.
yeah.
When you're speaking to these people and, when you're done, do you follow up with them? Do you
I
check
sure
in
do.
on them?
I sure
Right.
do. We definitely become friends. We message each other. I give them my phone number. We set up a time to talk because I want to make sure I'm focused on them. And we find the time to talk, and we sit back and we talk to each other. And it's easy to talk to someone who has gone through this because you don't have to explain a lot. It's like your kindred spirits at that time. And I invite them anytime they want to talk to me. They're more than happy to give me a call. So yes, I definitely give my phone number out to make sure that I'm there and available for them.
That's awesome. I know my brain is always like, who can I help? How can I help? And especially as a mom, do you find yourself having these conversations with your children, or is it something you talked about like one time and that was that, or is it an open conversation? How do they feel about you
Well,
going through that?
well, since I have boys, they're
Say no
they're
more.
not they're not those emotional people where they're going to check up on mom every minute of the day. They were raised by a very strong mother. I'm a very strong mother, and I know that they know I'm okay. Uh, they understand some of the things that because I wasn't a perfect mom. I don't think anybody's a perfect
No one's
mom, but
perfect.
I can look back at the times of things that I did with holding on too tight. That I think that was their biggest issue is holding on too tight. And they understand why I did that. They understand 100% why I did that. So raising them to tell my story, they kind of can be a little better with mom being the
Yeah.
the controlling too tight. But they've taught me how to let go. I mean, they're incredible boys. They really are. So they've taught me to let go. But they've always been aware of the fact that if they run into maybe their wives or their girlfriends who have gone through this, they can be they're emotionally intelligent enough to be able to talk to that person and be there for their person and be that safe house for them as well. So I honestly do believe that you have to have that communication open with your children, especially because they might meet someone in this situation. And it's very awkward when you meet someone and they don't understand. They're like, what do I say? I taught my boys what to say. And they can see that you can be fine. So yeah.
Oh, that's incredible that you did that. I know when I first started dating my boyfriend, and I was so, not that I was embarrassed, but it was difficult for me
Yeah,
to tell
of
him.
course. Of
So
course.
how did you tell your husband? Was it a conversation you had early on?
Well, um, how did
You
I
don't have
tell?
to tell me if
Funny.
you don't want.
There was a big conversation. There was actually a big conversation, but there was a small conversation because it's something that because there's things that go on that people see that they don't think is normal, if I can use that word, like maybe forgetting. I forget so much. He'll talk about his past. He had a great past, great childhood. He tells me all the chaotic stuff that that he went through. That
All the
I'm like,
crazy things.
what? And he'll ask me questions, and I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, how do you not know? I just don't know. Even anything as simple as math, because that was a period where I was in school. Remember that whole high school experience was had to do with me surviving every day with the sexual abuse. So my mind was protecting me every single day. So a lot of it was blocking out what was going on. So he thought it was rather odd because I'm a very smart and intelligent woman. So he thought it was kind of odd that I didn't remember a lot of things. And I just told him one day, listen, I was sexually abused as a teenager. And he was like, whoa. And I had him understand why I didn't, remember. But the biggest conversation came when I came back from Virginia. And I actually sat down with him and told him the story because it was years before I actually sat down and told him the events. And he was like, when you're ready to talk to me, I'll be there. So I came back from Virginia, and when I discovered that the dream that I always had was true, I was angry. And I sat down, and that was the time that he really saw me emotionally break down and tell him. So, and it was difficult for him because he didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to say. And I told him I went to counseling for it because it creates a unhappiness in your life because I had everything I wanted, but I wasn't happy and I needed to understand why. And that's when I start getting healing from what happened. So he finally understood what to say. And the words "I'm sorry" is it's such an incredible medicine for this. And I you don't have to ask questions. Just say "I'm sorry" without judgment. And I think that's enough. That is enough. So he actually got educated on how to deal with this situation. And sometimes he does slip, and when I forget things or I don't remember things, he's just like, "Oh, I understand why." So it takes him a while because he sees such a strong, normal
Mm-hmm.
person who's just, every day is a happy day for me. And then there's days that aren't. And he
Yep.
just thinks, okay, she's fine. She's strong. Nothing hurts her. But the reason I became strong is because of that incident.
Because you had to be.
Yeah, you had to be every single day. You had to be. And it's unfortunate at such an early age you had to do that. And a lot of people don't come out of it like you and I. A lot of people turn to drugs, suicide. A lot of people have very low self confidence where they couldn't speak on it. A lot of people are just so devastated that they live in that world of depression. So we're some of the lucky ones. We
We
really
are.
are.
We
And
are.
those are the people who haven't opened up.
Well, we're gonna help them open up in
Yeah.
time and when they're ready, of course. But yeah, no, sharing your voice and your story is the most incredible thing, and
It
that is
is.
a brilliant platform. And understanding you and where you come from, I'm in admiration of everything that you're doing because I know how difficult it is. So,
Well, thank you for giving us a stage because this is incredible. When you posted that, I was like, okay, yeah,
sold.
this is great. This is wonderful. And sometimes it's almost I second guess myself with a smile, but that's what we have to have. When we're discussing this, it's not about the tears. It's about the smile. It's about the survival to let people know it's not like it doesn't bother me because every day I still think about it, especially now that I'm actually talking about it and discussing it with people. It's even more prevalent on my mind. And it's just another healing process that I have to go through. I don't think we're ever going to forget. I don't think we're ever going to not feel a certain way. But I know that this is the only acceptance that I'm good with. I'm good with accepting what happened to me. I'm good with accepting it because it made me a stronger person. I wish I didn't have to say that, but I have to face facts. We have to face facts that we can't take that away. So we have to accept and we have to use our voice to be able to have other people feel the way that we do at this moment right now, that I'm okay and that I'm able to speak and that you can speak to me and that our lives are going to be great and we're going to be happy. We're not going to
Yes.
be sad and depressed. We're not going
Yeah.
to turn to alcohol. We're not going to turn to drugs. We're not going to because there was a point at my life when I was going through it where I did want to commit suicide and I tried. But my young mind, and I tell my
Mm-hmm.
husband this, my young mind, uh, I didn't understand how to do it, so I took a bottle of Tylenol, and right now I can laugh at that. Tylenol's not going to do anything, but every time I hear that there's someone who took their life, I understand that depression and the compassion that I have, I think that could bring me down more than what happened to me because that person lost their battle. That
Mm-hmm.
person lost the battle right there. And that really it saddens me so much that I was not able to be there to have a voice for that person. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult topic, and I always refer to it as rock bottom. They hit their rock bottom and they stayed there. And I had the same thoughts too. And it's difficult, but being able to turn it around and being able to say, you know what, this is enough, I'm leaving it in the past. It's
Mhm.
hard. It's very hard. But it's doable.
Yeah,
And
it is. It is.
and end up, living a great life, having an amazing, beautiful family, and
Oh,
doing
yes.
pageants at almost 56 years old, which just blows my mind. But, um, but I am honored to have heard your story, and I know this is just the beginning of you telling it to the world.
Oh,
So,
definitely, definitely.
Well, as a tradition, I always have my guests say at the end, I'm gonna like cut this part out because so it doesn't sound like ridiculous. But I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna let Miss Hillsborough County take us out, and then if you want to say, "Be bold, be you," and be blatantly honest. So be
Be
bold.
bold, be you, huh?
Yep.
Well, I
Be
want to
bold.
thank you, number one, for opening this up for us, because you're going to hear a lot of great stories from a lot of amazing, strong women. I know some of them, and it is such an honor to be in Florida and to compete for this title. I mean, it's great. You're going to have an amazing time. I remember my first time. What I'm going to suggest to you is just think every day, I'm having fun. Just,
Okay.
I'm having fun. Because if you miss that opportunity, you're going to regret it afterwards. This is my second pageant and I'm having fun. I am sitting back. I am putting everything out there. I'm doing everything that I can do in order to make sure that I'm prepared for that day. When we get to that Westgate Lake Resort and Spa in Orlando, Florida, and we're all together that weekend having a great time. Have fun and just be confident, because we can lose that. We can definitely lose that.
Definitely
Now,
amongst all these beautiful women and their stories and all that. I'm like, ah.
every single one of them are incredible role models. Every single one, and not just the misses, the miss too. I've seen some of you girls, and you're beautiful. You're intelligent. I mean, I sit there and I say to myself, "Wow, I was so busy going through all of this getting strong that I forgot there's a world out there. I could have jumped into this a long time ago." So I think you guys are incredible for doing that. And
Thank you.
again, I do thank you for having me on and
Yeah.
allowing me to share my story, because that's so important to do. So I'm incredibly humbled by this,
Well,
definitely.
thank you. Yeah, I hope it helps, and I hope that, later on today, if you need to talk, if you're bothered or something, I'm here. Just because I know sometimes resurfacing can be hard,
Yeah.
and but so I'm here if you need someone to talk to.
Well, the good thing about this resurfacing is going to help others. And that's what I'm going to take from this. It's going to help others. And, if anyone ever, messages you or anything and wants to contact me, you're more than welcome to give them any information.
I
Definitely.
will.
I'm here. I'm that safe house.
Good. I will definitely make that very known when I post.
Thank
So,
you so much.
yeah, thank you. All right, Miss Hillsborough County, if you want to take us out.
Be bold, be you, be blatantly honest.